Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show discussing the wonderful world of landscape photography. This time I'm talking to Benjamin Mays about his landscape photography journey. Ben is a young self-taught photographer based in Sydney, Australia. He has a particular passion for both big and small landscapes, evoking a sense of inspiration, wonder, awe and curiosity. A diverse approach in photographing natural places and shooting well outside golden hour into harsh light, which helps him capture unique ways of seeing our world. Ben talks about how he's decided to pursue photography as a career straight out of school, and about an incredible adventure in the Blue Mountains, which he'll remember for a long time. I hope you enjoy the show. G'day, Ben. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm well, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure. Very pleased to have you on the show. Been following your stuff for a little while, and I was pretty happy when you said yes to coming on board. So welcome.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
What's the Ben Mays story?
Oh, the Ben Mays story. Well, yeah, I know I've been kind of into art and stuff my whole life. So yeah, like I grew up painting and drawing as a kid. When I was like a little toddler, we like out in our back deck, we used to like do these kind of painting things where you'd splatter paint all over on one side, then fold the paint like the paper in half, then open it back up, and then we'd hang it up to dry, and we'd have dozens of those out in our back deck. So spent lots of time as a young kid getting all that creative stuff out of the way, and then it moved to drawing and stuff in primary school, which I really enjoyed. Even went through like a graffiti phase in year 7, not on trains, just in little books and stuff, but all very legal. But yeah, I had many different kind of creative outlets before
What was your tag?
It was Major, I believe. Major.
Cool.
Yeah, it was a bit cringe, but it was fun at the time.
We all do cringy things in year 7.
Yep. And then when I was in year 7, I even got into like a graffiti sort of phase, which was a bit cringe, but pretty fun at the time. And then, I've been into music since I was quite young as well. Still play the guitar a bit. So, yeah, kind of creative stuff has always been my thing. Never cared for maths. So, and then eventually when I was about 14, I'd say in year 8, I found photography, picked up my dad's old Nikon D70, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
Okay. 6 megapixel kind of thing, which he got in second-hand. Yeah. So I played around with that for a few years and just absolutely fell in love with it. Taking torch long exposures in the backyard and doing the classic kind of steel wool spinning stage, which is always fun. But yeah, and then my grandparents live up in the Blue Mountains up in Katoomba, so we typically go up there a couple of times a year. And so doing kind of the walks around there that I'd always done, but taking my camera with me was kind of the start of really enjoying nature photography. And then in 2015, my family went on a holiday to New Zealand, and I got to photograph, Milford Sound and all that kind of thing. And yeah, that was just when I really just started being really, really passionate about it. I was on like a Nikon.
Easy to get passionate about it in New Zealand, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was my first time, because Australia, except for Tasmania, really just has kind of glorified cliffs instead of mountains. So yeah, being able to go to Milford Sound and stuff and see, true fjords and mountains, snow-capped peaks and all of that was just incredible. So that really kind of ignited.
You realise how small the mountains in Australia are, don't you?
Yeah. They've got their own beauty, but they're just, in terms of scale, they're not the same. So kind of from there, I really just kind of hit the ground running. I was on my old Nikon D5200 and Takina 11-16 for a while, which is a pretty classic lens for a crop sensor lens for us landscape photographers. And then I was just getting more and more keen for it as I got older. I did it for my HSC body of work for visual arts in year 12, which was really fun, which I also combined with, some oil painting and charcoal drawings and stuff. But then once I left school, I was just, all in with landscapes. I was, dead broke. I had no job or anything like that straight out of school, but I was just spending, the $10 I had in my bank account to get for petrol so I could drive down to Kiama for the high cloud sunrise that was happening the next day, that kind of thing. Like there was a fire under me and I could just, couldn't not shoot. So I had a very productive year in 2019. And just 2019 was just when it blew up, I'd say. Is like start of the year, I spent a few days up in the Blue Mountains in like a week of really stormy weather. And I got some images up there that are still some of my all-time favorites, which includes my image Mutant, which is one with like the lightning inside the cave, an incredible sunset at the Three Sisters and light beams in the valley and all this, this crazy weather that's made for some really great photos. I met up with Luke Sharkey in Tasmania and in October of that year as well. Got just incredible conditions, which was thanks to his weather forecasting. We had to completely change our itinerary and just go with the classic Tasmania volatile weather the entire week. But I got to become friends with Luke Sharkey is one of Tasmania's biggest tourism landscape photographer, and just got to make some really cool things happen. Ended up deciding against studying uni, and now I'm just shooting full time.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, I guess what was it about that fire in your belly that made you say, okay, this is for me? What is it? Is it the feeling you get when you're out shooting? Is it the Insta fame? Is it what is it that really gets you going?
It definitely wasn't the Insta fame at the time. I was at a measly about 1,200 followers at the start of 2019, I think, which took about 5 years to get there. Yeah. It was just because, I've always frothed on, creative stuff. And this is something that I'd followed, landscape photographers who I'd been greatly inspired by. I followed very closely for a few years. And being, a high school student, I had, commitments, so I couldn't just chase conditions or afford to upgrade my gear or go on trips or anything like that. So once I got out of school, all that built up energy towards being inspired by my favorite photographers, just kind of exploded into me just making the most of every opportunity I can and shooting as much as I possibly could. And I still have maybe not quite as much motivation because I've, visited some of those spots many times, like a whole bunch of times now and stuff. But I'm still, just as passionate about shooting these days because it's all I know now. It's just what I love.
That's absolutely awesome. So what are the things that you're looking for in a composition or looking for when you're out, other than, when you get great conditions, and as long as you kind of know what you're doing, you can point the camera anywhere. But what is it that you are looking for when you're trying to pull together a comp and make that image something special?
Repetition and patterns is something that I really look out for, and whether that's in a wide angle kind of leading line kind of near to far sort of thing, or if that's just like an intimate abstract kind of shot where there's lines in the rocks that mirror each other in a really fascinating way, and you get out the mid-range to telephoto sort of lens and focus in on that. Often it's patterns and consistencies and textures or interesting relationships with textures and shapes that is what catches my eye. And to start with, I was definitely just only pretty much going for those epic dramatic wide angle shots, which I still really love to shoot. But more and more over the last kind of 2 years, I've just really fallen in love with intimate and abstract sort of nature photography as well. So, if there's a really fascinating subject that would get drowned in a wide angle shot, I much more prefer to isolate it and explore its intricacies, and just show that off as a subject in its more subtle and quiet beauty rather than just the in your face kind of epic scene.
Sure.
So yeah, I'll go kind of 50-50 between those two kind of approaches these days. Depends on, just really depends on what's presented to me.
Yeah, no, it's always that combination of conditions and the landscape in front of you, and I think the important thing a lot of people starting out don't really think about is what's in the foreground, what's in that midground, and what's in the background. But most of all, what's the subject? What's the story that I'm trying to tell? And I think, unless you can sort of piece those elements together, it's tough to make a really good shot.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just a balance between whatever is the focus, making sure that's the star of the show, not letting other things drown that out. If the, say you're shooting a seascape, if the sea stack in the background is the subject, if that's what you want, and the sunrise behind it is, if that's the subject, then it shouldn't be drowned out at the foreground. It shouldn't be 3/4 foreground. And like, it doesn't have to be a 2x3 super tall crop. It can be, cropped to 4x5 to cut out some of that foreground to make sure that, that distant subject is the focus, not, the rock in the corner, just keeping in perspective what you're actually shooting and what you want to show and convey through the shot.
In a lot of your shots, as you said, you've got everything from those broad grand landscape sort of wide angle shots down to the intimate. With the more intimate ones, I guess what is it that gets you going around those, and what is it that you're trying to get across to people that might look at that shot and say, whether it's a tree trunk with some interesting bark or whatever, what is it that you're after in communicating with that shot?
I think what I'm communicating changes photo to photo. Although, kind of the overarching message would be that, you don't need to be in Iceland or, shooting an epic sort of scene to find, beautiful subjects to shoot in nature. It can, just be the most subtle of subjects, but everything has its own kind of, unique, aesthetic to it and beauty to it. So, and like, I've learned to kind of see the world and the natural world in shapes and interactions of shapes and colors and textures and light, rather than, this is a rock, this is a stick, this is bark. And so being able to identify, patterns and shapes and swirls and colors and all that kind of thing in all of a huge variety of different subjects, whether that's, a fallen tree branch, or it's a funky rock, or it's a 14mm grand scene. You can find that in anything, and it makes photography so much more enjoyable as well when you're not, because with those huge grand scenes, you're restricted to those conditions so much as well. You can spend a week in a place and just get completely skunked with the light, get clear skies or smoke or just flat grey clouds, and just come away with nothing and disheartened if all you're going for is those epic shots. So like, I've got so many photos in a lot of portfolio shots in my abstracts kind of portfolio, which I really like, that were either under a clear sky, like pre-dawn or post-dawn, or with like midday harsh light, kind of shooting like water reflections and abstracts and stuff like that. Or even I've got a couple where like the sun was reflecting on wet sand, and it looks like it was just like either middle of the night, or looks like fish scales, or it's just can create these really interesting effects that you can play with, and you can just have so much fun with it. If you just don't have the pressure in yourself to come away with some masterpiece, and just explore little things like that, which it's both more fulfilling and more productive. I really enjoy it.
I've got to say, I'm sometimes guilty of not looking down at my feet, or over in another spot when conditions are a bit foul. Sometimes it's like, do I even get out of bed some days? But but I think you're right. It's really about when the conditions aren't playing the way that you envisaged when you go out there. And I think a big part of it is not setting an expectation for yourself every time you shoot that you're going to come away with this epic landscape shot. Because I was talking to somebody else a few weeks ago, and one of the things that I think it was Glenn Crouch, and he was saying that when you see those super burner skies and so forth, they are actually rare. When you look at every day of the year, 365 days of the year, you might get a dozen of those if you're lucky. If you're lucky, and you get being out at the time that they happen as well, you might get 5. Again, if you're lucky.
And then you look at a photographer's portfio and it looks like it happens every day.
Yeah, it happens every day, because they're the ones they're showing. That's exactly it. But and I think particularly for people that are new to the game, it's really important to notice what's around you when conditions aren't right, so that you can actually pick up some stuff. And it might only be B-roll, it might not be your most spectacular image, but to be honest, a lot of those images are very saleable. You see a lot of those turning up on people's walls because they like that pattern or the colors or whatever.
And for me, I like, if you look at it from a fine art printing perspective, like I feel like if you look at what art sells the most in terms of painting and stuff, it's the really simple, basic paintings. It's not these, the old, romantic style paintings by Turner and Bierstadt. They're not the ones selling. Well, I mean, they do because they're renowned. But these days, popular paintings that someone will buy to put on their wall will be very minimal and abstract. So it translates well for photography as well. It's not to me, like those grand epic stuff, they're great for Instagram. They're great for catching someone's eye and getting likes. But in terms of, sellable work, that minimal abstract stuff is just as viable. So it's definitely this. I feel like it's definitely been gaining a lot more traction in the last few years as well. Which has been really cool to see. There's been some really fantastic creative photography emerging for more and more people in the last few years. So,
I totally agree with that. What are your go-to places?
In terms of favorite, like the locations and stuff for that kind of thing. So I'm in Georges River in Sydney, which is not near anything super special.
I don't know. I grew up down that way myself, and there are some special spots if you know where to look and if you know what you're after.
I'd say my closest kind of wide angle spot, local, so to speak, would be like Kurnell, the cliffs of Kurnell, which is where I've captured one of my favorite shots before Vengeance. And I mean, like just the beaches around there you can use for abstracts and just water textures and all that kind of thing. Any beach or coastline you can use for that sort of thing. But I mean, Kurnell is fantastic as well for rock textures. Like I've gotten many of my favorite rock kind of abstracts as well around both Kurnell and then.
I mean, and then also any of the cliffs around Sydney, there's a lot of really good textures in the sandstone and stuff.
Yeah. Sandstone as a whole is just a fantastic subject for abstracts. And actually, while the Royal National Park as well just has this certain section where there's these just deep pink and red and yellow kind of tones swirling through the rock. And I don't know if that's from like different minerals and stuff. I don't know the science behind it or the geology. But I released a gallery earlier this year called Geomorph, which was an exploration of rock textures and shapes and lines and stuff. And it's 33 images, and I think 29 of those images were captured in the space of like 3 hours in one just afternoon in the national park, in the Royal National Park. I just went handheld and I think I took about 500 frames in the space of a few hours, got into just pure flow state and just just captured like rock textures and shapes and colors endlessly, and ended up making 95% of that into a gallery.
Cool.
It's just I love it. It's so fun. So yeah, like just the cliffs of Sydney and stuff are a really great spot for inspiration for more abstract sort of shots for me. In terms of more wide angle dramatic stuff, Cornell and then Kiama as well. Naturally, is obvious with Cathedral Rocks and Bombo Quarry. They're fantastic, and then the Sapphire Coast down around Mcgee is just off the charts. And there's more to it as well than just Camel Rock and Horsehead Rock. Like that one tree rock spot's blown up in the last 2 years. Like 3 years ago, there were barely any photos of that. I think Will Patino was one of the early guys that kind of discovered it, and then now everyone's got a shot of it. And then there's more to it still, like some of the guys that live down there, like Casey Flynn, who's got some fantastic work from the Eurobodalla sort of region. And there's just so much fantastic coastline around there. And like
go on.
Yes. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I spent about a week at the start of this year just down there, just exploring, and came away with a couple of good ones at the Icons. But just found just some other fantastic places that just I've barely seen any shots of. So Australia's got just some world-class coastline for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've been to Mimosa Rocks or Mimosa Park there, which is down between Bermagui and Tathra. And there's some of them are unmarked, but there's a couple of marked trails. One's Arraganoo and the other one's Gillard's Beach. And both of them, I had some of the best times in my photography career, just getting down there at, ridiculous hours in the dark, the only person on the beach, and just, as you say, getting into that flow state of just, and, even though in one case at Gillard's there, it was just blue sky, but the flow around the rocks and everything was just awesome. And the rocks themselves, when the sun came up, they turned this really bright orange, and it was just really spectacular. So if you're down that way again, I'd definitely direct you to those two. But there's just so many more places down there. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, for sure. I've seen a shot from Ken Duncan that's around Mimosa Rocks, and I couldn't find the exact spot, I don't think. But yeah, like there's a lot more out there, and there's also the pinnacles as well down further south, kind of a little bit closer towards these. And I shot that one afternoon. I don't think I came away with anything I published, but that's just such a unique kind of formation there as well.
It's a stunning landscape down there. Yeah, all that red and orange and white and pink and just phenomenal colours just in the rock.
It's like a hint of the desert on the coastline. It's absolutely really unique. There's
a lot of good spots down there. I'll have to talk to you about some of the spots around the Georges River. There are a few that if you know where to go, but it depends on what you're trying to get. But there's actually a few nice river scenes down there that aren't too bad.
Yeah, cool. All right, I'll have to have a look at those. Mine's on that close by.
I mean, I'm in the middle of suburbia. It's flat. There's no hills. The parks around me, apart from one, are all sort of football field style things or playgrounds. So you might have a tree or two, but I'm really itching to go somewhere where I can take a photo, because taking stuff of flowers in the backyard, been there, done that, don't want to do it again. Really itching to get somebody where there's a scene in front of me, but anyway, I'm sure we'll get there.
Yeah, for sure.
So you mentioned catching up with Luke Sharkey down in Tasmania. Are there any other photographers that you've particularly followed to learn from?
I think 2019, I started shooting a lot with Matty Hopkins and Ray Chow. Shot with them a fair bit. And Brian McCarthy as well is used to be Horizon Photography, but now his Instagram's just Ryan McCarthy. He's into graphic design now, which is pretty cool. And then other guys like Michael Kenny, Hee Chung. Only shot with him a couple of times, but got out a few times with that kind of crew, which is good. But I was mostly just teaching, learning myself in terms of the shooting process. Like I've never done, an in-person workshop or anything like that before. And like, Luke and I, even, when we were down there, he and I have very different shooting styles because, he's a little bit more tourism sort of style.
Yep.
Whereas I'm more in sport, a little bit more influenced by kind of like the fine art American guys like Alex Noriega and Ted Gore and all of them, and Enrico Fasati and stuff. We both kind of come from slightly different approaches. So what I did learn from Luke was kind of location reading and scouting and weather reading and all of that kind of thing, which is another integral part of landscape photography.
Absolutely,
and if it was me when we got down to Tassie, I would have just been like, oh, I guess we've got to stick it out through this crappy weather in our original plan. But no, we first thing we did after I touched down was grab some lunch, and we just completely rehashed our itinerary as he read the weather for the week in different areas of the state. He's just got such a wide, fantastic knowledge of the state. So it was a great person to be with, and definitely helped me get shots that I wouldn't be able to get without him, thanks to his, just knowledge of the whole state. And we covered, we went from the very southern tip of Tassie to the very east coast, and then went all the way over to the west side, and in doing so, touched the very top. So we pretty much covered the entire state except for driving through the middle, which we did at the end to get back to Hobart. But we covered a lot of ground in a week, but it was absolutely worth it.
Yeah, no, it's an outstanding location for photography, and I mean, anybody gets the chance to get down there, absolutely. Same with the Sapphire Coast, But like anything, be careful, because the environments in both of those locations are quite fragile. So don't go trashing those places either.
Tassie's a bit of a volatile one. Definitely my favorite. I'd say it's my favorite place for photography, though. Nothing really inspires me more than Tasmania, if I'm completely honest. So I've had 3 or 4 cancelled trips since that September 2019 one to try and get back there, thanks to COVID, but booked for January, so hopefully it goes through this time.
So you mentioned Alex Noriega and those guys, doing those sort of style. What is it about that style that I guess grabs your attention, and and what is it that you're trying to emulate out of that?
Well, like Alex Noriega, but then I have a very, very diverse kind of range of inspiration when it comes to the photographers and styles that I really enjoy. Like I really enjoy, Alex and like Eric Bennett, like their work, but TJ Thorne as well, who does some of the most creative photography out there, especially with his intentional camera movement and double exposure kind of work. It's really, really fascinating nature photography. And so like from the crazy wide angle scenes of like Enrico Fasati and Ted Gore, and all those guys, to the really intimate scenes of TJ and Sarah Marino and Jennifer Renwick. A huge amount of different inspirations that I really draw a lot of creative inspiration from. And it kind of, as I've kind of got this Frankenstein of different styles that has kind of made up my portfolio. That's good because I just enjoy so many different types. Like I think that's an important part of learning the craft as well. And I mean, honestly, it's not much different to painting and drawing either. You look at what some of the masters, and okay, you might never
reach that kind of level with, painting and drawing. There's not many that can match a Rembrandt, for example.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
you can learn a lot from how he uses light, and you can learn a lot about how he puts his compositions together and so forth. And you might then take some of that, use of light and shadow or whatever, and add that to your own kit bag. And I think the same goes for photography, that you pick up bits and pieces from different people, and at some point you kind of mold that into your style, if for want of a better term. And I think it's I think every photographer definitely goes through that sort of grab bag phase of picking bits out. And I'm always learning. I've been in photography for a long time, and it's something that I don't think, I'm always seeing new stuff that blows my mind, and I go, love to be able to emulate that. How did they do that? Might hit them up on Twitter or Instagram and ask them, and not just straight out, how did you do it? But, start a conversation about, what the process was, so that you can understand it a bit better. Some people are
absolutely
happy to share, others are a little bit more reticent, but,
Yeah. And I mean, like, it's a kind of the situation of, like, the less you know, the more stubbornly you think you know it. And then the more you know, like the more you know, the more you realize you know very little. So kind of just realizing you're not the smartest person in the room, or there's so many people who have been doing it for longer, better than me or you or anyone else. It's just, it can be like, if you get threatened by that, then that can be discouraging. But if you draw inspiration from it, it can be one of your biggest assets in emulating. And like I've got quite a diverse shooting style. I go from these wide angle shots to these intimate shots 50% of the time, which I'd say, even though they are very different, is now my style, and it kind of works together. But I've got other things that I really would love to learn, like vertical panoramas that show a kind of 180-degree scene kind of thing. Like there's a photographer from Spain, I think his name's Pablo Ruiz Garcia, and he just does these magnificent panoramic scenes that just takes a whole another level of pre-visualization. To be like, okay, this is a straight line, but if I shoot it as a pano, it's going to look like a curve framing the foreground kind of thing. And being able to shoot epic color with that much more, kind of like, say you've got a focus stack and exposure blend for 5 different things, like there's just a whole nother level of technique. And then on the other end of the scale is intentional camera movement and double exposures and all that kind of stuff, really creative abstract photography. And both are things I'd love to get into in my next trips and outings, just to further expand, my craft and the images I can offer and unique perspectives that I can offer. So it's just a matter of constantly pushing yourself, because if you settle into being happy with where you are, I mean, it's not that you should be down on yourself for where you are, but always kind of having aspirations for where you can, take it to the next level, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely with you there. The particularly in relation to the panos, I do a lot of bracketing and occasion. And unfortunately, you almost never see any of that of my work on Instagram, because it just doesn't lend itself to being shown on a screen. It's just so hard to get that. But when you print one of those, it might be 1.5 meters long, but only sort of 20 centimeters high. It looks pretty amazing when you've nailed sort of 30 or 40 frames that you've then had to blend and focus stack, and it's a ball ache. I got to say that. It's a process. The rewards for getting through it and getting something that you're really happy with are amazing once you actually look at it.
But absolutely,
as I say, I just don't like the look of those sorts of things personally. That I've seen a few of them, and they just kind of they end up being kind of too small unless you can zoom right into them, and on a screen they're just hard to they're hard to portray that width of the scene without printing.
Yeah, doing that kind of gallery ability on Instagram is good help for that, because you can kind of split it across, and you can have like a whole one and then have it full size, and people can kind of swipe through the panorama almost, which is good kind of workaround for that. But yeah, it's definitely, a lot of photography that is displayed on Instagram should be truly appreciated in bigger form, either on a website at the very minimum, and at best a print. But yeah, we live in a world of fast and easy consumption. So
everybody wants it in their hand, in the palm of their hand, not on a wall, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I've just last kind of year, I kind of got into collecting a few photography books, and it's just fantastic to be able to flick through a photographer's work, in an actual physical book, and at a size that's much bigger than what you see it on your phone. So I've got a mini collection now, which is of really diverse sort of stuff. So if anyone listening needs the push to buy a book from their favorite photographer, I really recommend it.
Absolutely. Buy some from me.
Buy one again.
I actually don't have any books on sale at the moment. I probably should put one together. No, I do print them for myself, so I've got about a dozen books, and I kind of do one each year of best say. Well, I try to cull it down to about 40 or 50 shots, but it's a great way of just looking at what you're doing and comparing. When I look at the first one that I did, first one I did was probably about 7 or 8 years ago, I think, the first book. And when you look at that, it's not the quality of the pages or anything, it's the quality of the photography and the change between there and the one that I'm working on at the moment. I can just see the progression, and it's a really good way of looking at your own progression. And it's not that expensive. It depends on how many photos you put in, how many pages you put with, but
that's who you go with as well.
Yeah, that sometimes works. Always looking for the specials on Vistaprint or one of those.
Memento,
or Blurb. I use Blurb quite a bit, actually. They're pretty good quality. But cool. Do you print much at all, or?
Not very much. I don't make many print sales. I love it when I do. In the past, kind of maybe 18 months, I've made probably 4 print sales. That being said, with my NFT collection that I've been selling, a big 24 by 36 inch print is part of that purchase, as well as a couple of other things. So once I'm out of lockdown, I've sold 10 so far. So once I'm out of lockdown, I'll be getting 10 big prints done, which I'm really excited for, because a bunch of them are shots that I've never printed before, and seeing them in large format is going to be really exciting. Doing it on a nice kind of the Hahn & Mule kind of fine art paper, which just looks fantastic. I printed on once before, and so looking forward to doing that. And I'd love to get more into the print market, but it's very tricky to break into, and something I've managed, a code that I haven't seemed to be able to crack yet.
There's a lot of people unable to crack that code. It's but I mean, it's like anything. If you get a name for good quality work, and word of mouth helps. Always helps if you can get into a gallery. But even there, gallery sales. A lot of galleries take somewhere between 40 and 55% of the sale price. So you're not always coming out of that with a lot of money. But you might come out with a bit more reputation and so forth.
Actually, that being said, I completely forgot. I'm actually onboarding with a new startup called Art Traveler, and they're kind of representing a small selection of photographers and painters and artists worldwide, and they'll be presenting those artists and photographers to art collectors and stuff. And so my photos will be with them for that, which I'm excited about. So that I completely forgot, but so that might be something where I start getting some prints through. So yeah, excited for that. Actually, I just sent them my kind of print files today. So yeah, looking forward to that kicking off.
Ah, nice. That's good.
Yeah.
So what do they? Obviously, they're an online startup. Do they handle all the printing and distribution, etc., worldwide, or how does their system work?
Yeah, so they've got they've got their printers and framers, and they'll be handling distribution and printing and all of that, and just taking it's kind of a 40-60 kind of thing. 40 going to them for the kind of compensation and stuff, because they will be presenting it to art collectors and marketing it, doing all that.
Yep,
sure. Fair enough. Doing all that promotion into the art world, and then I'm not sure if they'll have a gallery space. I can't remember if that was part of the plan, but they're definitely going to at least be doing a lot of promotion in collecting, like to putting it in front of the right eyes, I guess, and then handling all the printing and shipping logistics. Yeah,
cool. I think that's the important thing. Getting it in front of the right eyes. That's always the hard bit.
Yeah, for sure. And especially, like, I think I've come to realize that different platforms are better for marketing certain things than others. Like marketing on Instagram is not probably the place to be selling high-end products, or because most of your audience is primarily going to be younger people who understandably probably can't afford to necessarily maybe join your workshop and buy your prints and stuff. It's more on Facebook that I hear typically Facebook is a better way of doing maybe a sponsored post and getting print sales, and then a newsletter is probably even better for kind of workshop sales and that kind of thing. So I've kind of been very Instagram focused for a few years now, so I'm trying to diversify that up a bit, because it just makes sense that certain audiences won't be able to go for certain things that you're advertising.
Yeah. And I think that's important in your marketing plan, is to understand your audience, understand the market that you're going for, and understand how to get your work in front of them, because as you say, it's not much point dangling your line in Instagram if your market's over in Facebook, for example.
Yeah.
So you mentioned NFTs. I want to have a bit of a chat to you about that. What you started in that? Oh, first off, let's rewind. Some people won't know what they are. What's a 10-second or 30-second pitch on what NFTs are?
An NFT is basically it's a form of crypto art trading and selling, pretty much. So it's integrated with the Ethereum blockchain, and it's a way of selling one-of-one edition kind of art as a digital token rather than a physical piece, so anything digital can pretty much be an NFT. Like the first tweets got sold as NFTs for millions of dollars. It can be 3D renders, it can be animations, it can be videos, it can be photos. So it can be digital trading cards. It's just avatars. The mixed opinions on those avatars.
I'm not a fan personally, but whatever.
So I see it as a marketplace that's naturally emerged out of people spending more and more time online in the so-called metaverse, and placing more and more value into digital assets rather than physical assets. And people argue that they have no value because they're not tangible products, but I mean, it doesn't really make sense. It's like saying that Spotify has no value because you can't touch the vinyl CD. There are people that prefer the old, like it's the same sort of concept.
The way that sort of made it cement in my mind was you have people buying and selling stuff for games like Minecraft, or for real money, as well as in-game money, whatever the currency in-game happens to be. And this is, I guess, another extension of that out into the cryptocurrency world, so that and the art world, because I mean, when you have a look at some of the things, if someone's buying a piece of equipment or something out of Minecraft or World of Warcraft or whatever it is, that's actually a piece of digital art, like it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it translates, like the concept translates more naturally to things like, 3D artists and animators and all that kind of thing, because they can't sell physical pieces of their work. They're digital creations. And so it's, originally it was much more strong, and kind of still is much more strongly that sort of market, because they can't sell a print of a 3D animation. But photographers have been able to get in on it as well, which has been really cool. It's a new way of selling for people that, like myself, that have tried for years to sell prints and have failed miserably. If people place value in something, then it has value. And value is subjective, and people are placing value in NFTs, so it's worth giving it a shot.
I think one of the aspects of it that is interesting and quite different to some of the, particularly the physical market, is the secondary sales market, because depending on the platform you're on, but most of the platforms allow you to actually claim a royalty on a secondary sale. So you can sell the original or make the original sale to a collector, and that collector can then on-sell it, but up to 10% or 15% or whatever the platform allows, can then go to the original artist each time it sells. So if that work goes up in value, then each time it sells, then you get this passive income stream coming back to the original artist, which rarely ever happens in the physical art world.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like if Van Gogh were alive today, let's just, for example, say and I know his art went up in value after he died. Yeah. But say he sold, a painting for $150 when he was 20, and then people all of a sudden valued the hell out of his work when he was 40 and sold it for $2 million. In the painting world, he'd receive none of that. He wouldn't receive a dime.
That's exactly.
But in NFTs, if someone said their royalties to 10%, then, they'd receive $200,000. Yeah. Which is, rightfully so, because it's but like they created that painting, they should get the value back. And so it's something, there's pros and cons to it naturally. And I'm not naive to the negative sides of it. But yes, it's a very exciting new space that's allowing a rare opportunity for kind of that ownership to be taken back to the original creators, which is really cool.
Yeah. I was in a discussion in a space. Was it last week or the week before? Anyway, and one of the things that came up there was the extension into, I guess, more mainstream sales that people are more familiar with, and things like music artists. There's a couple of artists that have actually started to put up their either songs or film clips, or music clips with video and everything. But what they do is actually it's not a one of one. So I mean, you could do that, and but they're actually fractionalizing it so that you may have one of 5 million, and so they can actually sell that same piece 5 million times. And whilst the premium that they ask initially isn't that high, let's say they sell one of 5 million at $1 each, they've just made $5 million. But they're doing that literally without going through any kind of other distribution. Spotify doesn't take a cut. Apple Music doesn't take a cut. CBS Records doesn't take a cut, et cetera, et cetera. And so, you can start to see where, artists and creators themselves can actually take back control of their income stream totally. And
absolutely.
But in that discussion, there was also a bit about, it hasn't happened yet, but you could envisage where a football club, for example, Manchester United starts selling its season tickets that way, so that you then use the token that you end up with on your phone to tap in at the gate when you walk in the gate, and at the end of the year, that token expires because you can actually write that into the contract associated with the token, that it has an expiry date. And so, it's going to be interesting to see how much that expands, and a lot will depend on, mainstream adoption of cryptocurrencies. But there are communities, I know, aside from, in Western cultures, there's certainly communities in Africa or South America where cryptocurrency is starting to become the default, as opposed to, the fiat currencies, because the local fiat currency has virtually no values.
It's pretty crazy. And I mean, I'm pretty sure there's a profile collection of 10,000 called the Sports Icon Lions Club. And they having one of those, I'm pretty sure they have plans for it, so that, owning one of those grants access to events and, live Ask Me Anything kind of chats with actual sports stars and stuff like that. So I think we're already starting to see the full creative use that these sort of the NFT world has. And I think the sooner it moves to clean energy sources, then I think a lot more of the world will become a lot more enthusiastic about it as well, because that's something that I was hesitant about, as well as the environment, the kind of impacts of that. But I kind of, my approach to that was how low my carbon footprint has been. I only got into NFTs due to being in lockdown, and my carbon footprint has been so minimally low because I'm not even leaving the house. That I think it balances out. It's about managing your own individual carbon footprint, and people have been running workshops for, selling out 5 to 10 international workshops a year, making an income off that for decades, or not decades, but years and years, like photographers. Which is, would emit an astronomical amount of carbon. And I haven't ever heard someone
with all the flights and
you're encouraging people
diesel driving around in in remote locations, etc.
It'd be so much more than selling out a collection
of things when they start talking about it.
And I've never heard a single person argue it and say oh, you're a hypocrite if you run workshops because of the carbon emitted by catching a plane. If you do both, maybe that's something to consider. Maybe you either do NFTs or international workshops, but I understand the concern, but the clean energy is on the horizon in the crypto world, and planes aren't going anywhere in terms of being not having an environmental impact. But people
they're going to be having a fairly negative impact for some time. I think the other thing is that there are ways of offsetting, over and above what you might have your own lifestyle changes. And I know I'll be talking to somebody very soon, actually, on the podcast, who's even giving up red meat as part of their, they've sort of fully committed to getting into offsets. So they're paying, to offset every ounce or whatever of carbon emissions that their transactions create. But then they're also, doing things like changing their lifestyle to fully commit to being able to have a clear conscience, I guess, about using those sorts of platforms. Yeah,
absolutely. And I'm with NFTs. I'm part of the Give Back to Nature group, which is donating a percentage of sales as well. And so I have part of my collection is that I'm 10% of anything I earn is going back towards environmental charities. And so already I've been able to donate a grant towards 2 different charities, which has been Give Back to Nature, which cleaned up the equivalent of 2,500 plastic bottles from our beaches, and then money towards the Wilderness Society Australia, towards helping protect the Tarkine rainforest. And next I'll probably put a whole bunch towards Greenpeace, who do some just absolutely fantastic conservationist work over here in Australia and internationally. So I've been able to donate to environmental causes I've far more than I ever have before because of these sales. And so there's a lot more nuance to the discussion than the
NFT
carbon than the carbon footprint from a single sale. So
no, definitely. And you and I are never going to solve the world's problems through talking about it here. But I think that education for people, and that getting people to understand, A, what they are, B, how they're used, B, what the pros and cons are. It's important for people to understand it, to be able to either make a decision whether or not to participate. I see some positives. I see some negatives. I see some of the same sort of behaviours, I guess, that you might see in the physical art world as well, where somebody will get popular, get known, and there'll be a cluster around that sort of person. And people trying to emulate them and so forth. But on the whole, I think it'll probably be where art sales kind of start to shift to. I think there's always a place for physical. I don't,
absolutely.
For things like sculpture, that's always going to be, in the physical realm. Though you see some of the digital artists doing effectively the same sort of thing, but I think the physical nature of being able to touch and feel a sculpture is an important part of it, part of the experience.
I really just see them existing as two separate marketplaces, and like they don't really interfere with each other, because
definitely
digital ownership is so different to physical ownership of an artwork. And I think there's such a large amount of people that'll value both, that I think they'll both be able to just kind of coexist as different forms of art collecting and selling. It'll just be interesting to see how it progresses.
Were you across the OpenSea scandal, for want of a better word, where
I saw that today? The insider trading, that was a bit crazy.
For those that don't know, the head of product for OpenSea, I believe it was snagging sales before they'd actually launched, or just before they'd launched, or just as they launched, because he sort of knew that they were coming, and so got first mover advantage and then flipped them. Wasn't flipping them for a lot, which was kind of strange. A lot of people were scratching their heads as to why somebody that it was in a position like that was doing what they were doing. But I guess that sort of behaviour, and I've seen a few others where people have been convinced into selling their art collections, their NFT collections before release, and then them being flipped for a significant profit. Not allowing the market to be the market. Do you see regulation being an answer to that, or do you think that regulation is just going to be very difficult?
It'll be difficult, but I think it'll happen eventually, as it becomes more and more widely adopted, which we're seeing, with Visa bought a CryptoPunk, which, to those who aren't familiar, CryptoPunks is the biggest NFT collection out there. It's 10,000 little avatars that are going for millions of dollars. And, Macquarie Bank, I think, has started accepting Bitcoin and stuff like that. So I think as it becomes more and more widely integrated and accepted and normalized, there's got to be regulation. There's regulation that happens in the standard financial world, and there's serious punishments for insider trading. So I think it's the Wild West in NFTs at the moment, and
it definitely is.
People can kind of get away with a lot right now, but I think at some point it's going to be regulated a lot more.
I can see, like there's a dark web. I can still see the black market still, carrying on as there always will be, there's black market in the physical, and I'm not necessarily talking about the physical art world, though. There's definitely a black market there in some cases. But I think those sorts of things will end up being those pieces that end up sort of shuffling off into a dark corner because regulation comes in. I mean, I know I was in a conversation that was talking a bit about the tax implications of buying and selling NFTs and so forth, and the profits that you make out of that being attributable in Australia anyway to capital gains tax and similar sorts of things overseas, and all of the I know all the tax officers, they're already starting to make their sort of stake their claim that, well, it's money, so we want some of it. Once the tax office has taken notice of it, you can guarantee the banks and everyone else will, and that'll bring regulation. I think you nailed it there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, getting back to the photography side of things, it was an interesting little detour, but what do you think you've learned about the world through photography?
I've definitely gained a much stronger appreciation through of the natural world, and just seeing things differently, really. And I mean, that's a bit of a cliche answer, but it's true. It's very much true. When I go for walks with my grandparents in the Blue Mountains when I was 13, before I kind of got into photography, I think it was cool, but wasn't anything super special. But now a rock with a cool pattern is special to me. Like any little, so many different things in nature that most people would just not care about are just really fascinating and fascinating to me, and just so cool. And I just have a huge appreciation for the world we live in, which is to become a passion for conservation and kind of joining causes with charities and stuff that I really whose work I really admire, and just kind of using my photography to both create beautiful photos and use it as a creative outlet, but also to help kind of bring a bit more awareness to the world that we live in, which I probably could do more, and I'm trying something I'd like to try and use to bring a bit more awareness for, and which I think as photographers, if we're displaying the natural world, I think it'd be great to show people what we have to lose if we don't take care of it. So yeah
totally. What's your most memorable experience that you've had out shooting?
I've had a few of those. One stands out above the rest, which is that lightning cave shot that I've got up in the Blue Mountains is still probably the scariest and just most ridiculous experience I've had shooting in the last however many years it's been.
So what's the story behind that? How did that come about? You're obviously in the Blue Mountains. What were you doing in the car?
So it was it was January 2019, and I was jobless at the time, and I really wanted a photo of the Three Sisters with the lightning strike behind it, which I saw but didn't capture while I was up there. So since my grandparents live in Katoomba, I just drove up having no commitments and just spent 4 or 5 days there, just shooting the really stormy atmospheric conditions, which was fantastic. And then one of the days I noticed I was looking at the Bureau of Meteorology, and could see the beginnings of a pretty intense storm building out to the west. And I knew that cave at Lincoln's Rock in Wentworth Falls, I knew that faced the sunset, which is west. So I knew that if there was some nice drama happening, that would be able to capture it quite well. And so I was like, if I go there, I could just shoot it. And if I don't get time to get out before it hits, I can just wait out the storm in the cave. Famous last words. So I kind of got there, and the sky's already just black and ominous. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, probably 2:30, I think. But it was almost as dark as if it was getting close to dusk. And so I got down into the cave and set up, and this just formation of a storm just started developing, and it was just sending down the most aggressive lightning I've ever seen. Like there was no trailing across the sky, none of that flashy stuff. It was just bang, just straight down to the earth. Like I had no time to waste. It was the most aggressive lightning I've ever seen. And it was just, sending bolts down more and more regularly. It just started to like block out the sun. And I was shooting kind of in the left corner of the cave for a bit, which is where a bit more lightning action was. But then I transitioned over to the right side of the cave, which is the classic kind of composition from the cave, which is the one I ended up with. And from that corner was where the cloud started to extend kind of down into the valley. Like it was just this kind of like it was alive. It was just like so heavy and laden with storm water and energy that was just like it was sagging down into the valley. And so the image is actually a time blend of about 2 minutes or maybe 3 minutes. So the lightning bolt happened at one point in the same position in the frame, but then the cloud got a slightly more gnarly formation about 3 minutes later. Yep. So rather than have one separately with the lightning and then one separately 3 minutes later with the rest of the cloud formation, I just kind of blended them together just to tell the best part, of this, tell the story of the shot in one frame. So there was very, but no, I wouldn't even consider it a composite. It was really just kind of layer over that texture of the cloud with the lightning bolt. Okay. And I didn't have a lightning trigger or anything like that, so I was just having to manually fire every 5 seconds because it was still relatively light. It wasn't nighttime. I couldn't do like a 5 second, 10-second exposure. Yeah, right. I had to keep it about 2 seconds because otherwise the lightning got washed out by the ambient light. So it took a lot of frames, and then eventually just turned into this wall of water like that was just coming towards me. There was no visibility, and then it just hit. Like it was like a barricade. Like it's just getting blasted by sideways rain and like grit. Like it was just so much dirt being blown in as well. Like it was kicked up from around me. And like I had this tiny little pathetic umbrella and that was being blown inside out from the wind bouncing off the back of the cave and then into my umbrella. So it was just like, made completely useless. I was just pummeled. I was just sitting in there getting pummeled. And there's off in the right corner, there's a slightly lower little bit that you can sit in. So I tucked myself into there. And there's still a hole that like right in front of that. So I wasn't really protected from the elements at all. I was just kind of sitting there with my umbrella flailing inside out all the time. And my camera gear I had at the time was just like in a kind of sling over shoulder bag. So I was sitting next to me with like water pooling up around it and like starting to absolutely soak it. And I was just praying for like 30 minutes, like just hoping that I'd get out alive because it was absolutely terrifying. Yeah. And it's just, I could just hear constant lightning. And after maybe 25, 30 minutes, the rain died down to not bucketing, but just standard kind of rain, and the wind was still strong, but not as strong. So I scrambled out of there, and the cave, for people that aren't familiar with it, you've got to kind of climb up about 2 meters up this kind of jagged rock to get into it. So I scrambled down that facing outwards and lost a few pieces of like kind of filter cases and stuff to the wind, cut myself up a little bit getting down. And then just to the left of that cave is a much larger cave that's just directly on the ground. You don't have to climb up to it. Yep. So I sheltered in there for a bit longer just to wait till the rain and lightning died down more. And then after maybe another 30 minutes or so, maybe 40, I can't even remember the time, just it's a bit of a blur in my brain, but probably between 20 and 40 minutes, the rain died down enough for me and the lightning wasn't so regular. And so I decided to sprint up and make a dash for my car, which was, these caves are below a big flat kind of open cliff top. And my car was kind of maybe 100 meters away or so from the edge of the cliff top. So I decided to make a dash for it. And as I'm running across this open, completely exposed cliff top, I realized I'm holding both a metal umbrella and an aluminium tripod in my hand, like a walking metal conductor, this lanky guy with 2 lightning rods in his hand. So I'm freaking out. but I've got no choice but to try and make it to my car.
Yeah.
And so I cross the cliff, make it to my car, and as soon as I reach my car, a bolt strikes about 50 meters away from me at the top of the cliff. It was like this deafening crash, and it just sent me into overdrive. I was just like so close. And so I just like chucked my tripod and umbrella away from me, just like, get this crap away from me. I started fumbling with the keys, and I'm just
you still weren't in the car when that happened. Wow.
Yeah, I was standing outside. I hadn't even made it into the car at that point. I'm fumbling with my keys and just like yelling with adrenaline and shaking. And eventually I managed to get inside and like just chucked my camera and everything and tripod and everything in, and just sat down and was just like, what just happened? You know? Wow. It's the kind of thing where like you go on a crazy roller coaster and your body can't process it, but it was that times 10.
Yeah, nice.
And yeah, I was shaking for a few hours afterwards. Like it was probably a bit of a traumatic experience, I'd say. Like it's a funny, crazy story to tell now, but at the time I was struggling.
Yeah, would have been pretty intense. That's insane. That's absolutely insane.
Yeah, and my grandparents, having lived there since 2008, I'd say they reckoned it was probably top 3 most aggressive storms they'd ever seen up there in a decade of living in the Blue Mountains. They reckon it was one of the 3 most insane storms they'd ever seen up there. And you know, driving back on the highway from Wentworth Falls, there was just debris everywhere, and there was emergency vehicles driving up and down the highway, and I imagine the SES would be busy that day. And I also, actually, as another crazy thing, I found out later that if lightning, a cave is one of the worst places you can hide out a lightning storm in, because apparently if lightning strikes the cliff top above the cave can act like a spark plug.
Wow.
And that bolt that struck about 50 meters away from me would have been pretty damn close to exactly the top of the cliff where I was.
Yeah, wow.
And so I don't like to think about what would have happened if I was still in the cave. So I was very, very lucky to come out of it unscathed, albeit without a few scratches. But yeah, at least I came with a shot. So we've got something to show.
That's the main thing.
Something to show for it. Yeah, it wasn't fruitless, at least.
Yeah,
so,
it's those sorts of stories, though, I guess, make those shots even more valuable to you, you know, because of the experience of it, you know.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was crazy.
What, aside from running away from lightning, what do you like to do when you're not out shooting?
What am I not out shooting? Well, during COVID, the last couple of months I've just naturally spent a lot of time inside. But before this kind of lockdown for the last few months, I was really just getting into casual hiking, just without my camera, just really enjoying it. You know, the Royal National Park, doing the coast track from Bundina to Otford, did that a couple of times. There's some nice kind of overnighters in the Blue Mountains. Did one, the Narrow Neck Trail, really enjoyed that. So yeah, just getting out into the outdoors is something I've in the last kind of 8 months before lockdown I started really enjoying. And the more, I find the more you kind of time you spend out in nature, even without a camera, is the more you kind of come across subjects that inspire you and you realize you could come back to and shoot. And that time where I spent a few hours in the national park and got 28 portfolio shots for that gallery, I believe like that was fostered by having walked past that section about 3 or 4 times from doing the coast track, and just doing national park walks. So I'd seen those textures a bunch of times and taken photos with my phone and stuff, but having developed that familiarity is the word, and just walking past it and seeing it as a potential subject just really fostered this amazing kind of really productive session of kind of helped me get into that flow state when I did eventually come back to photograph it. But yeah, and then when I'm not doing that, I'll just be at home. I'll hang out with my partner a bit and play a little bit of music here and there. Although, photography stuff and photo editing and this most of my life, to be honest. It's both my hobby and my passion and my job now. So yeah.
I'm pleased that you are a photographer. Speaking of photographers, are there any out there that I should be talking to for the podcast?
Aussie, just Australians?
No, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It's landscape photography world, so I'll talk to people from anywhere. As long as they can speak some form of English, I'll be happy to talk to them, because I don't speak too many other languages.
Well, let me think.
Take
so
your
many
time.
good people out there.
Edit out the thinking.
I'll say a few underrated people that I don't have much attention, just to help them out. There's a guy over in New Zealand called Mcgee who has some really fantastic work. I think he lives in the North Island.
Yep.
He's just got some really cool forest work. And he, does some fantastic abstracts and intimates as well. Who else? I run a landscape photography Discord with Tristan Todd and a couple of other guys. So they're kind of mostly Canadians in that, but bunch of Australians as well, and some Americans, a couple of people from Europe too. We've got about maybe 480 members in there at the moment.
Cool.
So anyone listening, jump onto the Landscape Photography Worldwide Discord. We'd love to have you in there. But yeah, Tristan Todd would be great. He lives in Vancouver and just shoots heaps of really cool forest work, like some of the amazing lush rainforests they've got over there. Some of the local Sydney guys like Hesu Chung, Matty Hopkins, would be really cool to have on.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've got a long list, but I always like to add to it if I can.
Yeah.
All right, brilliant. I've got one more question for you, and it's the most important question that I can ask tonight. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
See, a few years ago that would have been a yes, but now it's a no. I used to be a fiend for a ham and pineapple Hawaiian pizza, but I'm much more traditional Italian now in terms of pizza enjoyment. So, I'm a no now for pineapple, but a few years ago it would have been a yes.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
I think you're my first swinger.
I've kind of I've really started enjoying like the Napolitana style ones, like with just like classic margarita or ham and mushroom kind of thing. So yeah, pineapple's becoming more of a big no for me.
Fair enough. Well, thanks very, very much for taking the time out to talk to me tonight, Ben. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have too. And, fantastic to, hear some of, how you do your thing and so forth. Where can people find your work?
So people can find me on Instagram at benjamin.mays. You can find me on Twitter as well at Benjamin Mays. My website is benmaysfineart.com. I'm coming out with a revamped website, but it should be the same address shortly. I'm on Discord in that Landscape Photography Worldwide chat that we run, which is really cool, and Facebook as well at Ben Mays Photography. But yeah, that's about it.
Sounds good.
Thanks for having me on as well, Grant. Really appreciate you taking me on. It's been a good chat.
Yeah, thanks very much for coming. It's been great.
Yeah, no worries at all.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'm going to be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne and hope to see you out shooting soon.